Ki Jai. Okay, we're all set. Okay, good to see you all. We are back in Hillsborough, North Carolina, actually New Goloka, with all the devotees, and back from our trip to Pennsylvania to get the second injection of the COVID vaccine. And now that we've had the second injection, we're ready to travel. Unfortunately, they won't let anybody go to Australia. And unfortunately, they won't let anybody go to New Zealand. Unfortunately, they won't let anyone go to Fiji. So I'm pretty much, or unfortunately, they won't let anyone go to Europe. So unfortunately, I'm stuck in the United States. What can I do? Okay, we'll try to be Krishna conscious, even though we're in the United States. So, we're going to chant Jai Radha Madhava. So actually, some people question about the vaccine. And they're coming up with so many stories about the vaccine that the vaccine will make you turn into a mutant. And then you're going to have 2 heads or 3 heads. Might be good to have 2 heads, 3 heads. 4 heads, you can become Lord Brahma. That would be pretty nice. But anyway, I am a scientist and I utilize science, and sometimes you take a chance. Everything we do in this world is taking a chance. But if we're taking a chance for preaching, like Prabhupada went on a boat and he had 2 heart attacks on the boat coming over from India. I mean, that was definitely taking a chance, much more. Much more. Someone just sent a funny comment. I'm not going to comment on it. So much more than taking a COVID shot. So if I start to mutate, then you'll know that you shouldn't get a COVID shot. Anyway, I have to preach, I have to travel, and I have to take a risk. Like everything's a risk in this world. Walking out the door is a risk. And the funny thing is that the greatest risk you take is home. Most accidents happen at home. Most violence occurs between family members. So it might even be dangerous to celebrate Valentine's Day tomorrow. So anyway, that's a joke. So let's chant Jai Radha Madhava, and we'll look at our deities while we're chanting Jai Radha Madhava. All righty. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Giri Vadadari, Jaya Giri Vadadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Giri Vadadari, Jaya Giri Vadadari. Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari Kunja Bihari, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari. Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Pichana Palapa, Jaya Giri Badodare, Giri Badodare, Pichana Palapa, Jaya Giri Badodare, Giri Badodare, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Vrajajana Nandana, Yasoda Nandana, Jaya Vrajajana Nandana, Yamuna Tira Vanacharina, Kunja Bihari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Yamuna Tira Vanacharina, Kunja Bihari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Ranga Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Ranga Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravatikacharya, also Tada Sitashi Shiman, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Adhantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shridhar Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadha, Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika. Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagadata Sami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Budle Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. So Omagana Timiranda Shah Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shikadvai Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay, so we're going to continue with the Caitanya Charitamrta. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All right, so let's set up the screen here for everybody. You have to do that, like that, and one more thing. Let's see. Huh, that's interesting. Didn't show. Oh, there it is. All right. Move that to the side. Down. Okay. Starting with text 30 today. So this is about the tree of devotional service. And we're hearing about many wonderful devotees who are part of the Caitanya tree. So Anjali Anjali Bhari, Pele Chaturadishe, Doridra Kudhana Kaya, Malakara Hase. The transcendental gardener, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, distributed handful after handful of fruit in all directions, and when the poor, hungry people ate the fruit, the gardener smiled with great pleasure. Poor, hungry people means us that are hankering for relief from material distress. That's why we're hungry. So, of course, this is a metaphor. And Lord Chaitanya is distributing this tree and the fruit of devotional service freely to everybody. Malakara kahi shuna vriksha parivara mula shaka ubashaka yatete prakara. Lord Chaitanya thus addressed the multifarious varieties of branches and sub-branches of the tree of devotional service. Alokika vriksha kare sarvendrikarama stavara haya dare Janga Mera Dharma. Since the tree of devotional service is transcendental, every one of its parts can perform the action of all the others. Although a tree is supposed to be immovable, this tree nevertheless moves. And Prabhupada says, it is our experience in the material world that trees stand in one place, but in the spiritual world, a tree can go from one place to another. Therefore, everything in the spiritual world is called alokika, uncommon or transcendental. Another feature of such a tree is that it can act universally. In the material world, the roots of a tree go deep within the earth to gather food, but in the spiritual world, the twigs, branches, and leaves of the upper portion of the tree can act like roots. And not only that, but every tree in the spiritual world is a kalpa vriksha tree. Kalpa vriksha means a tree that fulfills your desire. You can go up to the tree and beg. Of course, in the spiritual world, you are begging for something that will please Krishna, not something that will please yourself. You're not going to the desired tree and begging for a Tesla or something like that, like in the material world. So, just like, anyway, I told the story many times before, how one of my godbrothers went up to a tree, and he was begging for a tree, first I went to the tree and begged that godbrother, who was over 50, would never get married, and he got very upset with me, ran up to the same tree and begged the opposite, and he got the opposite effect. So you got to be careful what you ask for. Or, the example you all may have heard before is once upon a time I was in Vrindavan, and I was with devotees who I didn't want to go on parikrama with because they were upsetting me. They were arguing with each other. And I said, Krishna, make some arrangement so I don't have to go on parikrama with these devotees. And guess what? Oh my God. Krishna made an arrangement, but not exactly the type of arrangement I would have liked him to make. What type of arrangement did he make? Next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. Oh my God. So, anyway. And I couldn't sit for a week or two. E vrikshara anga haya sabha sa chetana. Vadya vyapila sabe sakala bhuvana. Okay. All parts of the tree are spiritually cognizant, and thus as they grow, they spread all over the world. Ekala malakara ami kahan dyaba. Ekala va kata phala padya vilaba. I am the only gardener. How many places can I go? How many fruits can I pick and distribute? Of course, this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking. He said, I'm the only gardener. So how can I give more people Krishna consciousness? Purport. Here, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indicates that the distribution of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra should be performed by combined forces. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He laments, how can I act alone? How can I alone pick the fruit and distribute it all over the world? This indicates that all classes of devotees should combine to distribute the Hare Krishna Mahamantra without consideration of the time, place, or situation. In other words, everyone should be a guru, at least instructing guru. Yare Deka Tarika, Krishna Upadesh Marigari Guru Hoitori Desh. One may say, but how can I travel all over the world like a guru or like a sannyasi? Well, that's not really the point. Traditionally, the gurus never traveled all over the world. They would stay in one place and train their disciples and disciplinis in Krishna consciousness. So you can just stay at home, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to the Brahmin in South India. Kumar, he said to the Brahmin, Stanistita, Shutikatam, Tan Van Manobir, just stay where you are and then become guru. Ekala, Utana Dite Haya Parishrama, Kaya Paya, Kaya Na Paya, Rahe Mane Brahma. That's a very interesting verse. Wow. It would certainly be a very laborious task to pick the fruits and distribute them alone. And still, I suspect that some would receive them and others would not. Ataibami agya dilun sabakare, yahan tahan prema pala deha yare tare. Therefore, I order every man within this universe to accept this Krishna conscious movement and distribute it everywhere, every man and woman. In this connection, there is a song sung by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Ene chaya shoti maya nashibara lagi Harinama Mahamantra lao tumi magi Vakati vinhoda prabhu Charane podiya Se Harinama mantra Lila makiya. The Sankirtan movement has been introduced by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to dispel the illusion of Maya, by which everyone in this material world thinks himself to be a product of matter. I mean, it's thinking you're the body. And that people who are related to your body are your family. And therefore, to have many duties pertaining to the body. Actually, I was just speaking to one of my godbrothers today, and he was saying in a particular religion, they actually, to ascertain whether someone is qualified to be a person in that religion, particularly a minister, I'm not going to give away which religion it is, they do a DNA analysis. Not only a DNA analysis in the mitochondria. Now, for those of you who are not scientists or doctors, know that that's where you can trace the maternal line, because in this particular religion, hopefully I'm not giving it away, the maternal line is the line that's important. If you have a mother who is a member of that particular religion, you are definitely qualified. And if you have a father, you go to hell. A father who's a member of the religion and mother isn't. Sorry about that one. Of course, everyone has a father. So this is really interesting. So it's really like body consciousness. And these people who have this particular type of matriarchal DNA in the mitochondria, they actually think they're the chosen people. Of course, I also have that mitochondria DNA. So, but the point of being chosen, let me make this clear. The point of being chosen is you can choose to be chosen. Because everybody gets the same instruction from Krishna. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dvesho stinapriya. Krishna is equal to everyone. He doesn't have any special favorites or special enemies. But he's reciprocating with everybody. So you can choose, just like Prabhupada chose to be the one. The opportunity was given to many. Many are given the opportunity in many areas, but few choose to actually take the risk. So we should take the risk. Actually, the living entity is not his material body, his spirit soul. He has a spiritual need to be eternally blissful and full of knowledge, but unfortunately, he identifies himself with the body, sometimes a human being, sometimes as an animal, sometimes a tree, sometimes an aquatic, that's a fish if you didn't know, sometimes a demigod or a lobster, and so on. Thus, with each change of body, he develops a different type of consciousness with different types of activities, and thus becomes increasingly entangled in material existence, transmigrating perpetually from one body to another. Under the spell of Maya or illusion, he does not consider the past or future, but is simply satisfied with the short lifespan that he has gotten for the present. To eradicate this illusion, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has brought the Sankirtan movement, and he requests everyone to accept and distribute it. A person who is actually a follower of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur must immediately accept the request of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, offering respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet, and thus beg from him the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If one is fortunate enough to beg from the Lord this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, his life is successful. Wow. So our consciousness is not simply changed from one body to another, but even within the present body, from one day to another, one moment to another, depending on what we eat, depending on who we talk to, depending on what music we listen to. The modes of nature affect us. We are on a roller coaster. Don't get on a roller coaster. I want to be on solid ground. Ekala malakara ami kata pala kaba nadiava e palak ara ki kariba. Hold on a second. I am the only gardener. If I do not distribute these fruits, what shall I do with them? How many fruits can I alone eat? So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu produced so many fruits of devotional service that they must be distributed all over the world. Otherwise, how could he alone relish and taste each and every fruit? The original reason that Lord Sri Krishna descended as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to understand Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna and to taste that love. The fruits of the tree of devotional service were innumerable, and therefore he wanted to distribute them unrestrictedly to everyone. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore writes, Anarpitacharim chirit karunaya vatirna kalo samarpayatum unnato jwala rasam swabhakti shriyam hari puratta sundara dyuti kadamba sandipitaka Sadarirya Kandare Spurathuva Sachinandanaha. There were many previous incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but none were so generous, kind, and magnanimous as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for he distributed the most confidential aspect of devotional service, namely the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna. Wow. Therefore, Sri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada desires that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu live perpetually in the hearts of all devotees, for thus they can understand and relish the loving affairs of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. Wow, what a beautiful verse. Atma icham rate viksha sinche nirantara dahate asankhya palavriksherupara. By the transcendental desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, water has been sprinkled all over the tree, and thus there are innumerable fruits of love of Godhead. God is unlimited, and his desires are also unlimited. This example of unlimited fruits is factually appropriate even within the material context, for with the goodwill of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there can be enough fruits, grains, and other foodstuffs produced so that all the people in the world could not finish them even if they ate 10 times their capacity. In this material world, there's actually no scarcity of anything but Krishna consciousness. If people become Krishna conscious by the transcendental will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there will be enough foodstuffs produced so that people will have no economic problems at all. One can very easily understand this fact. The production of fruits and flowers depends not upon our will, but upon the supreme will of the Personality of Godhead. If he is pleased, he can supply enough fruits, flowers, etc., but if people are atheistic and godless, then nature by his will restricts the supply of food. For example, in several provinces, in India especially, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh and other adjoining states, there is sometimes a great scarcity of foodstuffs due to lack of rainfall. So-called scientists and economists cannot do anything about this. Therefore, to solve all problems, one must seek the goodwill of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by becoming Krishna conscious and worshiping Him regularly in devotional service. So Prabhupada also commented on other reasons for people starving in the world today. One reason, he said, is people hoard, businessmen, they hoard food till the prices go up and then they sell it. So that's one reason, because they want to keep supply down, the prices are higher. That makes sense. Well, it makes sense materially, but not spiritually, of course. Another reason is that in many countries, or every country, there's actually restrictions as to who can come to a particular country. And many countries have more land and more fertile land and better rainfall than other countries. And so that's one reason. And then, of course, there's also the distribution of food. In America, sometimes we prefer to keep the prices up by throwing food away, food that could be sent to other countries. And of course, ultimately, the reason is that people are not performing devotional service. When people perform devotional service, there's adequate rain, there's adequate nutrition in the soil, everything is taken care of. It's a fact. And the cows and the other animals produce more. So there's different reasons like that Prabhupada dealt with, not only from the spiritual side of things, but also from the material side of things, such as people having borders or countries having borders, and the hoarding of food. And also, another thing I forgot to mention, perhaps even more important, is the production of meat. Because when you produce meat, of course, you don't produce meat. Meat comes from animals. You don't produce them. They produce themselves. But anyway, let's use the word meat production. Meat production uses something between 15 to 20 times the amount of resources of the earth. For example, 16, 20 times the amount of water, 16 times the amount of protein. It's very inefficient means of feeding people. What to speak of the karmic reaction from eating meat. So that's a really, really big reason. And also the meat production is perhaps one of the primary, if not the primary, causes of global warming, which causes the weather disasters that we're experiencing all the time now. Okay? So anyway, there's many reasons. Many, many reasons. Ataiva saba paladeha yaritare. Kaya ukaloka ajara amare. Distribute this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Let people eat the fruits and ultimately become free from old age and death. So you may say, free from old age and death. What happened to you, Maharaj? You're getting old. No, I am not getting old. The body is getting old, and I'm not identifying with the body. That's the only way to become free from old age and death. Not that the body lives eternally or those bones shall rise again. The Krishna consciousness movement introduced by Lord Caitanya is extremely important because one who takes to it, becomes eternal, being freed from birth, death, and old age. People do not recognize that the real distresses in life are the four principles of birth, death, old age, and disease. They are so foolish that they resign themselves to these four miseries, not knowing the transcendental remedy of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can become free from all misery. But because they are enchanted by the illusory energy, people do not take this movement seriously. Therefore, those who are actually servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must seriously distribute this movement all over the world to render the greatest benefit to human society. Of course, animals and other lower species are not capable of understanding this movement, but if even a small number of human beings takes it seriously, then by their chanting loudly, all living entities, including even trees, animals, and other lower species, will be benefited. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired from Haridas Thakur how he was to benefit living entities other than human beings, Srila Haridas Thakur replied that the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is so potent that if it is chanted loudly, everyone will benefit, including the lower species of life, the animate living entities. Of course, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, he had the animals chanting and dancing, the tigers and the deer and elephants chanting and dancing and rolling on the ground. We cannot do that. At least I can't. Jagat avyapya mora avipunya kyati sukhi haya loka mora gahi vega kirti. If the fruits are distributed all over the world, my reputation as a pious man will be known everywhere, and thus all people will glorify my name with great pleasure. So this prediction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's is now actually coming to pass. The Krishna consciousness movement is being distributed all over the world through the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and people who are leading confused, chaotic lives are now feeling transcendental happiness. They are finding peace in Sankirtan, and therefore they are acknowledging the supreme benefit of this movement. This is the blessing of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His prediction is now factually being fulfilled, and those who are sober and conscientious are appreciating the value of this great movement. And all of us, before we came to Krishna consciousness, were confused and leading chaotic lives. It's a fact. I mean, I didn't know what the purpose of life was. I wasn't encouraged by my own motivation to do anything because I didn't know what life was all about. And as soon as I found out what life was all about, I became happy and dedicated my life to Prabhupada. And here is a very important verse that practically all the devotees should memorize. Bharatabu mitte hoila manusa janma yar janma sarataka karikara parupakara. And Prabhupada often would quote this verse, especially I apologize to everybody, but my internet went down. It's interesting. I had more problems with my internet at home than I do with. That is really interesting. Than I do with on the road. So, okay. So let's get back to the Caitanya Charitamrita. Hold on a second. Let me share a screen again. Sorry about that glitch. Glitch. That's a glitch in the matrix, as they say. Okay, everybody's still on. Okay. So let me start this verse again, since it's a very important verse. And I don't know, if we lost. Let's see. Let me see what the chat says. Yeah, the internet's having some side effects from the vaccine. So, internet's worse off than me. So let's do this verse again, since it's such an important verse, and I don't know where we got disconnected. This is a verse, just to reiterate, this is a verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would often use, and Prabhupada would super often use whenever he was dealing with people from India. Because this verse he utilized to encourage people to take up the service of preaching Krishna consciousness, because it's a great responsibility when you actually are born in a country that's dedicated to spirituality. America is not dedicated to spirituality. Hold on a second. America is dedicated to material pursuits. It's like Villa Swarga. I won't tell you what that is. So this verse is Bharta Bhumite Hala Manusha Janma Yar Janma Sarataka Kari Kara Para Upakara. Again, translation. One who has taken his birth as a human being in the land of India, Bharta Barsha, should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all other people. The magnanimity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was expressed in this very important verse. Although he was born in Bengal, and Bengalis therefore have a special duty toward him, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is addressing not only Bengalis, but all the inhabitants of India. It is in the land of India that actual human civilization can be developed. Now, also in America, but by Prabhupada's mercy, human life is especially meant for God realization, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra. Atato Brahma Jigyasa, anyone who takes birth in the land of India, Bharatavarsha, has the special privilege of being able to take advantage of the instruction and guidance of the Vedic civilization. He automatically receives the basic principles of spiritual life. For 99.9% of the Indian people, even simple village farmers and others who are neither educated nor sophisticated, believe in the transmigration of the soul, believe in past and future lives, believe in God, and naturally want to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, even if people are of a different religion. That's just natural for people in India. Whereas people elsewhere, like in the UK, I don't know what percentage believe in God, but probably less than 50%. And naturally, even if they believe in him, they don't want to worship him. And naturally, even if they did want to worship him, they don't believe in the transmigration of the soul. They think the soul and the body are the same. So in India, you're born with this information, basically, reincarnation. These ideas are the natural inheritance of a person born in India. India has many holy places of pilgrimage, such as Gaya, Rameshwaram, and Jagannath Puri, and still people go there by the hundreds and thousands. And America has many places of pilgrimage too, such as the birthplace of George Washington, the Washington Monument. I just passed through Washington the day before yesterday. Lincoln Memorial. Let me try to think of other places of pilgrimage. Of course, according to the Bhagavatam, these are places of pilgrimage for crows. Let me say, what's wrong with crows? Well, crows, if you've ever been to India, Indian crows are very special. They're big. I mean, I've seen gigantic crows. I was so afraid that one was going to carry me off one time. I was in Jagannath Puri, and unfortunately, we had the place where we were staying was right next to the garbage dump. And there was these giant crows like Garuda. But the main things are the crows were going for the garbage. And the swans, they go for the nectar. So there's places of pilgrimage for crows. You know, when you worship people who are materialistic, then you're like a crow. Tirtha Buddhi Salena Karyat Ganesha Abigeshu Seva Gokara. Or like a cow or an ass. Sorry. That's what the Bhagavatam says. Although the present leaders of India are influencing the people not to believe in God, not to believe in a next life, and not to believe in a distinction between pious and impious life. Actually, that was when Prabhupada was present, and Indira Gandhi was the leader of India. But now, of course, you have the leader of India who's trying to encourage people to give up what we're going to talk about here. And although they are teaching them how to drink wine, eat meat, and become supposedly civilized, people are nevertheless afraid of the four activities of sinful life, namely illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. And whenever there's a religious festival, they gather together by the thousands. It's true. Like you have the Kumbh Mela festival, or people go to the temple, and sometimes there's so many people, they trample each other. We have actual experience of this. Whenever the Krishna consciousness movement holds a Sankirtan festival in a big city like Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, that's Chennai nowadays, Ahmedabad, or Hyderabad, thousands of people come to hear. Sometimes we speak in English, even though most people do not understand English, they nevertheless come to hear us. Even when imitation incarnations of Godhead speak, people gather in the thousands, for everyone who was born in the land of India has a natural spiritual inclination and is taught the basic principles of spiritual life. They merely need to be a little more educated in the Vedic principles. Therefore, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu says here, Janma, Sarthaka, Karikara Para Upakar. If an Indian is educated in the Vedic principles, he is able to perform the most beneficial welfare activity for the entire world. Of course, there's also a downside to that. You may say, what's the downside? Well, Prabhupada said that people from India who are not Krishna conscious are pretending to be asleep. People in the West are sleeping. And Prabhupada said, it is easier to wake up someone who is actually sleeping than someone who is pretending to be asleep. That's true. Someone is pretending to be asleep. For example, sometimes someone may knock on my door, and I have a sign on my door, do not disturb. So I pretend that I'm not hearing the knock. Sometimes it gets louder, and I just ignore the stupid thing. So that's probably typified many people from India like that. They're pretending to be asleep. They know better. They know that the worship of demigods is foolish, but they won't give it up. They know, at least, subconsciously, they know, but they don't want to surrender. For the people in the West, they don't know, so it's easier to convince them. Another example Prabhupada gave, it's easier to teach someone to play the piano if they never try to teach themselves than teaching someone who actually tried to teach himself the wrong way. So there's a downside and an upside. And that's why Prabhupada came to America, because the people were innocent. They weren't they were misled, but they weren't misled in such a sophisticated manner as people are misled in India. So they took to Krishna consciousness because they were attracted to Prabhupada's chanting of the holy names of the Lord. At present, for want of Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, the entire world is in darkness, having been covered by the four principles of sinful life: meat eaten, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. Therefore, there's a need for vigorous propaganda to educate people to refrain from sinful activities. This will bring peace and prosperity. The rogues, thieves, and debauchees will naturally decrease in number, and all of human society will be Krishna conscious. When will that day come? The practical effect of our spreading the Krishna conscious movement all over the world is that now the most degraded debauchees are becoming the most elevated saints. This is only one Indian's humble service. That's Prabhupada's referring to himself, to the world. If all Indians had taken to this path as advised by Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, India would be given a unique gift to the world, and thus India would have been glorified. Now, however, India is known as a poverty-stricken country, and whenever anyone from America or another opulent country goes to India, he sees many people lying by the footpaths for whom there are not even provisions for 2 meals a day. There are also institutions collecting money from all parts of the world in the name of welfare activities for poverty-stricken people, but they are spending it for their own sense gratification. Now, in the order of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the Krishna conscious movement has been started and people are benefiting from this movement. Therefore, it is now the duty of the leading men of India to consider the importance of this movement and train many Indians to go outside of India to preach this cult. People will accept it, and there will be cooperation among the Indian people, among the other people of the world, and the mission of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu will then be fulfilled. Jai. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu will then be glorified all over the world, and people will naturally be happy and peaceful and prosperous, not only in this life, but also in the next. For as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, anyone who understands Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will very easily get salvation and freedom from the repetition of birth and death and go back home, back to Godhead. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu therefore requests every Indian to become a preacher of his cult to save the world from disastrous confusion. This is not only the duty of Indians, but the duty of everyone, and we are very happy that American, European boys and girls, and now old people, old men and old women, are seriously cooperating with this movement. One should know definitely, at that time it was only boys and girls. One should know definitely that the best welfare activity for all human society is to awaken man's God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. Therefore, everyone should help this great movement. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, 22nd chapter, verse 35, which is the next quoted in the Caitanya Caritamrta. I don't know if I should go to this verse. It's probably a long purport. Yeah, this is a long purport. So maybe we will end here with text 41 is the last one. And tomorrow we'll start with 42. So we're going to stop sharing and then hear some questions from all of you. Let me unmute you. Right now we're using our alternative internet connection since the actual internet connection went down. By the mercy of Krishna, we have an alternative connection. Okay, so who wants to ask a question?
Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances.
Haribo Rakesh. So, what's the question?
The Gurudev, the question is regarding like 2 days ago when you went for your shot and it was like 11:30 p.m. in Sydney. You were, I think, it was morning up there where you gave the class about subtle body, and you said Parikshit Maharaj had a disagreement with his guru Sukadev Goswami about atonement, how to get prayashchit done. Can you please can you please elaborate?
Well, it's not that he actually had a disagreement. The guru was testing him. Sometimes the guru will say something to see if the disciple understands. Like if I were to say to a disciple, you are the body. And the disciple would say, Guru Maharaj, that's not correct. So the disciple would take the devil's advocate position. So in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the beginning of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj asked the question, how can all the living entities be saved from hell? And so Shukadeva, because in the 5th canto, there was an elaborate description of all the different hells. And Shukadeva Goswami replies, talking about what's called prayaschitta. Prayaschitta means atonement. Just like in the religion that I was brought up in, there's one day of atonement a year. Pretty good. You can sin the rest of the year, and then one day you just fast one day, and the rest of the year you can let all hell break loose. That's a
We
pretty
have
good
the same
religion.
thing in Jainism. Yeah, we have the same thing. We call it Kamat Kauna.
Yeah, I know. So that's great. I mean, we should actually join that religion. It's a lot easier than Krishna consciousness. So
Yes.
that's called Prayaschitta. And so when Parikshit Maharaj heard this description by his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj objected. It's not that he disobeyed the order of the spiritual master, because the spiritual master sometimes is testing the disciple. So Parikshit Maharaj objected. He said, my dear Guru, Prayaschitta doesn't work, because even if one performs some austerity and gives up that activity that caused that sinful reaction, guess what? The seed for the desire to perform that activity remains. Let's say, okay, let's say I overeat one day. Let's just use that particular example. That one day I just eat too much. I eat too much kasha, which is kind of hard, or quinoa. I eat too much, and I suffer. That's my atonement. My belly is too full, and I'm having stomach aches, and I suffer. So the next day, I may not eat too much because I've learned my lesson. But 2 or 3 days later, guess what? I'm going to eat too much again, because the desire to satisfy the tongue to eat too much has remained. So in the same way, if you simply feel bad about something, perform some austerity, atonement, beg for forgiveness, if you don't undergo some particular type of purification to give up the desire, then it is useless. So Parikshit Maharaj presented that to Shukadeva Goswami, and he even gave the example of an elephant bathing, Kunjara Shochara. That an elephant bathes, and after it bathes, it throws dirt on itself. I know there's a purpose for that, but it's simply a metaphorical example. So he said, he bathes and throws dirt on himself. It's like you have a kid, a little kid, and you bathe the kid, and the kid goes out and plays in dirt again. That's pretty stupid. I mean, sometimes I have people clean my house, and I say, why are you cleaning the house? I'm just going to make it dirty again. Better not to clean my room. Better not to clean my house, because I'm just going to make it dirty again. Or why clean my clothes? I'm just going to wear them and make them dirty again. Of course, we don't use that argument. Sometimes I do use that argument. It's kind of funny. So anyway, Parikshit Maharaj said, what's the use? Because they'll simply have that desire to perform that particular activity again. And because they have desire to perform that particular activity again, they're going to do it. So there has to be some other process to purify the heart. And therefore, ultimately, Shukadeva Goswami was testing his disciple, and Shukadeva Goswami came out with the right answer, which was Tasmat Sankirtanam Vishnu, Jagad Mangalam Angnasa Mahatam Apikaravya, Vijakantaka Nishkritam. The best type of atonement, the best type of prayaschitta is Sankirtan. Because why? Cheto Darpanam Arjanam. Bhava Mahad Vagni Nirvapanam. Shreya Kairavik Chandrita Vitarinam. Vijabadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipatam. Purnamrita Svadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate. Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. That's the first Shikshashika, the victory to the holy names. Anyway, so the point is, it cleanses the dust of the heart that's been accumulated for many, 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 many births. So if we chant, it cleanses the desire, or as described in the Nectar of Devotion, it's like taking a seed, and the seed is compared to a seed of desire. It's like frying a seed, and once you fry a seed, the seed cannot fructify anymore. So that's the point. So that was the whole discussion. And it was an important discussion, also illustrating Parikshit Maharaj's compassion, because when he heard about the suffering of the conditioned souls in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he got very upset. And he was thinking, how can they be freed? Many of us hear about suffering of others, and it makes us interested. We don't think, oh, how can they be freed? We just think, wow, isn't that cool? People are suffering. You know, a real Vaishnava, if he hears people who are suffering, wants to sacrifice himself to relieve other suffering, like Vasudev Dutt. He was ready to go to hell or stay in the material world for an innumerable period of time to save everybody else. That's a real Vaishnava. Anyway, that was Parikshit Maharaj. That was a description of the whole discussion. So who else has a question here? Someone else ask a question.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Oh, Rishikesh. So what's up?
Gurudev, my question was, when you say Janma Karma Chame Divyam, when you understand Krishna, is it okay we understand it as on the strength of authority, like from Bhagavad Gita itself, or we have to actually understand it in truth?
Evam, yeah. Janma Karma Chame Divyam. Evam. So one has to understand Tatvataha. One has to understand in truth. That means one has to have full faith. To understand means to have full faith. And Chaktva Deham Purna Janma Naiti Mameti Charjana. Then one will not actually take birth again in the material world. Yes. So one has to understand and accept. To understand means to accept, not just to have theoretical knowledge. Then you don't have to take birth again in the material world. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata chaktva deham purna janma naiti mam eti sarjana. That means one who knows the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities does not have to take birth in his material world after chakva deham, giving up his body. Purna janma naiti. That means never again will he take birth again in this world. Purna janma. That means again and again and again.
How does it really happen? Is it because one accepts devotional service and that's why?
Yes, if one actually has faith in Krishna and Krishna's transcendental activities, one engages in devotional service and recognizes himself as an eternal servant of Krishna and acts in that particular capacity. And that's the liberated stage. Right now, you're thinking other things. Like if I ask you, who are you, Rishikesh? You'll say, well, I'm Hemant Gandhi. You have other ideas of your identity. You say, I'm a Gujarati. And then you'll say, you know, I'm a member of this family, right? And you have so many like upadis. What's an upadi? Upadi means designations. You're not fully, I mean, I'm speaking rhetorically. I'm not accusing you of anything, but you know, just taking you as every man here. But you're not thinking, I'm simply Gopi Bharata Padakamala Dasa Dasa Dasanu Das. You're still very much attached to all these other designations, right?
Right.
Very much attached to these other designations. And so Sarvapadi Vinir Muktam Tat Padatwaina Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktuchite. So one actually has to give up their attachment to these particular upadi, what's called an upadi or designation, in order to actually see Krishna. As long as you're thinking, yeah, I'm thinking I'm a servant of Krishna, but also I'm this, and this. You know, I'm also an American. I'm also white. I'm also 71 years old. I'm also, what else am I? I don't know what else am I. I'm a resident in Hillsborough, North Carolina. I am, you know, whatever. I'm a guru. You know, these are all designations. I mean, they're services, yes. I'm not saying we give up the services. Like you have a family, you got to take care of your family. I'm a guru, I got to take care of all these submissive disciples or unsubmissive disciples. So it's my service. But if I think that that is my identity, then I'm a guru. You understand it? Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, someone thinks he's a guru is a guru. It's a cow or an ass. So, so we have so many designations. We're not completely fixed upon that one designation that I'm an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of God, or servant of a servant of a servant of the Lord who maintains the gopis in Vrindavan. So many other designations. I mean, you think about it, you could make a list of all your designations, all the things you think you are. It's pretty interesting. A resident of Cary, containment area for relocated Yankees. Anyway, so. That's funny. So that's important. So who else has a question? Anyone else? Where's Pran Govinda?
Oh, I have a question.
Oh, okay. Guni.
These are my question is, I was thinking about what you were talking about with Lord Caitanya, and I was wondering at what point, or like what distinguishes someone whose desire to preach or like urgency to preach is actually an avoidance mechanism of, dealing with personal or internal feelings or issues, or other anartas, where it's like you're putting yourself out to preach or using that as a crutch rather than going deeper, more internal in your spiritual life.
That's an interesting question. Actually, I found that quite interesting. So I can answer it in several ways. One way is the typical ISKCON way. Is this if you go out and you'll like this way. If you go out and preach, then and you actually present Krishna, then gradually Krishna will read the Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yanamama Piyanti Te. Like the Tesham Sata Yuktanam Bhajantam Pritipurvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yanamama Piyanti Te. So that's one way I can answer it. Another way is that one should work on themselves, should take some time, not an all or nothing thing. So it's just like, I mean, if I waited till I was free from anarthas, till I preached, or freed from my internal, whatever, my internal demons, or whatever I have in my heart to preach, then I'd be waiting a long time. So therefore, what I think is that my ultimate opinion is that one has to do both things simultaneously. That one has to definitely work on themselves, be introspective, work on themselves. Of course, good sadhana, and also, some psychological work may be required to deal with one's issues. And at the same time, try your best to bring others to Krishna consciousness. Then Krishna will give you special mercy to work on yourself too. So yes, it is a fact that some people go out and preach because they can't deal with themselves. It's an avoidance mechanism. Like, I mean, obviously, if you're in a kirtan all day long, you won't have, then you won't realize how depressed you are. So that is absolutely a fact. I have to agree with that 100%. So the work on oneself has to be done, but at the same time, not to neglect the kirtan. So I think it's a balanced thing. It's neither one nor the other, but both work together.
Thank you.
Both work. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Guni. That's her nickname. Her name is Falguni, but anyway, so you wouldn't want to have the name Guni or Guna. That's a masculine name, is Guna, the modes. Anyway, so it's funny. All right, Pran Govinda, you have a question. Prani.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. All goes to Prabhupada.
Your gopi name is Prani.
Thank you. Maharaj, in the 4th chapter, when you are reading, I don't know, last month or whenever,
Yeah.
there is a verse, Say Dware Achandale Kirtana Sanchare, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu owed a wrath of the holy name and love of Godhead with which he garlanded the entire material world.
Yes.
So then why is he asking help? He already garlanded and he gave love of Godhead.
Yeah, but you took the garland off. Just like, you know the story when Indra gave a garland, Durvasa Muni gave a garland to Indra?
Yes.
What did
He
Indra do with it?
ignored it. He neglected.
No,
He put
he
on
gave
his
it to his
elephant.
elephant, and the elephant
Yeah,
trampled it.
Vairava. Yeah. And
And
he
then
stepped
Indra
on
got
it.
cursed. And he stepped on it. So Indra got cursed. It was a big mistake. So sometimes do not throw off a garland that you're given by Durvasa Muni or by the deities.
Ah.
If one disrespects the Lord's mercy, one loses the Lord's mercy. So, it's like rain. Another example is, the rain probably gives this example. The rain falls down on concrete. The rain falls down on the ground. Concrete accepts it, but the rain falls everywhere. The rain also falls in the ocean. So there's a different result. The rain is one, but the result is different depending upon the receptivity of the rain. That was the example Prabhupada gave. It's not my example.
So are you saying that you are preaching is required to make people eligible to grasp that or beg that
People
holy
have
name?
to have the desire. People have to have the desire to accept. The spiritual master in Krishna's mercy is equal. Samoham sarvadveshu name dvesho stinapriyaha. Krishna says, I'm equal to everyone. No one is especially my friend and no one is my enemy. So Krishna's reciprocating, but some people just approach Krishna as their enemy. That's up to them. It's free will. Free will of the living entity. As much Krishna conscious as we are is up to us. Lord Chaitanya has given us full mercy. Prabhupada has given us full mercy. Whoever your guru is, giving us all full mercy. The acharyas have given us full mercy, but we're not accepting that full mercy. We are attached. We're holding on. We're holding on to this material energy. We're very foolish. Very foolish.
Maharaj, can I ask you one more question or you have
One more question. Yeah, one more question.
Maharaj, on the end of the one of the purport you just read, so let me see if I can find. It says that, I'm paraphrasing, that the disciple or the conditioned soul has to beg from advanced soul or guru.
Yeah.
But in the terminology begging means you don't expect anything to who you give something. But here, when you give initiate, you're expecting he has to follow four regulatory principle.
That's right. That's how you beg. That's the way you beg, is you follow the instructions. If you say, give me your mercy, give me your mercy. And it's like, okay, here's my mercy, follow four regulator principles. And you say, no, I don't want that mercy.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
I'll give you a practical example. Someone once came to the temple and said, give me your blessings, Maharaj. And I say, bless you to be Krishna conscious. And he said, I didn't want that particular type of blessing. I want the blessing of having money. I said, oh, can't do anything about that one. Om Jaya Jagadish Hari, Swami Jaya Jagadish Hari. Swami Jaya Jagadish Hari. Krishna, the question is Krishna the only enjoyer? The devotees are also enjoyers? Yes, devotees are enjoyers, but they enjoy by giving Krishna enjoyment. That's the only way to enjoy. Okay, see everybody tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening is going to be Sunday here, our ritual Sunday feast. I think I'll be having it from the temple room. It'll be the same time as normal. Thank you very much. All glories to Divine.